What is up, everybody? We are joined today for our latest episode of our podcast. Obviously, everybody knows Theo, but this is Alex. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Alex. I don't know what to say. I'm Alex.
Yeah.
I go to the same school. Yeah.
And he is an esteemed editor. That's his sort of role, isn't he? He's into his VFX. And he's a big Batman fan and a big fan of comic books and all the rest, hence why we wanted him on. Today to talk about this great film, which we all absolutely loved. So what we're going to do with this podcast is actually break it down into a few different sections. We'll talk first about Matt Reeves, the Batman, the filmmaking first, and then obviously the story, the characters. And then we want to kind of take it into a direction where we just discuss the character of Batman, the other films, how the Batman, stacks up to the other films, how Rob Pattinson's Batman stacks up to the other Batmans. And what we want to do, what we would personally want to see with this
the trilogy
going forward, right? So first off, let's just talk about the Batman.
The first thing that stood out to me was how the thematic element of this Batman was so grey. I felt with the Christopher Nolan trilogy, and we're already comparing. That. A lot of the themes were sometimes a bit more clear cut, and with this one, it felt a lot more grey, and I felt a little bit uneasy with how the Riddler was comparing himself to the Batman, and actually seeing that effect have on the Batman when he sort of starts losing it, saying, "No, you're different from me," and trying to tell himself that they're different. Because ultimately, the one thing that this Robert Pattinson character does still abide by is the fact that he doesn't kill.
Right.
And that is the main distinction. Although, apart from that, a lot of the motivations are quite similar. It's coming from a place of anger. It's coming from a place of vengeance.
Yeah.
And that is the main theme running throughout this film. And, I think there'll be a spoiler warning at the beginning of the pod.
Spoilers, yeah.
The final realization that he has that actually he can't just be anger and vengeance. He has to move on and become more of a figure. Is quite inspiring to see.
Yeah.
And so that was one of my main.
That was the big thing for you.
Yeah.
Alexander, thoughts?
I think personally, because I've seen obviously the Batman explored through many forms of media, games, comics, TV. For the film media, it was really amazing visually in terms of obviously cinematography was great, but really the way that they showed Gotham
world
for the first time was really it was amazing. You can really tell that Matt Reeves chose to take the time to show the little things in the opening scene when we have that wide shot of the train station. We really see how messed up and dirty everything is. We always in Batman Begins, it was almost hinted at. It was very briefly shown how messed up Gotham was, but in Matt Reeves, it's really gritty, really dark, and we just see it, and I love it because that's what Gotham
and do you know what
City
it is? It's like Arkham.
Exactly.
The Arkham games.
Exactly.
It's really like the Arkham games.
Yeah.
The world, that was something I think, obviously, to touch on the production design. It just, the Wayne Tower as well, where it lives, and the Batcave. Yeah. It's so inventive and it's so
what was actually
filthy.
What was really interesting was the Batman Begins. They have a moment where Bruce Wayne goes to see Falcone in the restaurant. The restaurant, and that area looks very similar to Matt Reeves's entail of it in terms of it's got this sort of lower level, and there's
there's always trains. You can never see the sun, right?
Yeah. And so the Christopher Nolan's depiction of that, he goes into sort of cafe-looking building for one scene only, and Falcone pulls out a gun and basically says, "I could kill you here. We got a judge over there," and he points out, and so that's the only time that Nolan touches upon Gotham's darker, corrupt side. Whereas Matt Reeves decided, actually, no, we're going to have Batman and Bruce Wayne go to the same location. I think 3 times in the film. And he kind of goes through the eyes of Catwoman as well.
Yes, we'll need to talk about that scene,
So, instead of seeing that as one scene, Matt Reeves decided to turn the whole film into
this exploration
of that corruption, and I think that hasn't been seen before.
No, it has not.
And it's really done well in terms of the genre of going for a noir thriller in the style of Chinatown, all of this stuff. So I really think.
So actually, going on that. Speaking of which, because I think there will be a lot of people who are watching this who are new perhaps to filmmaking and this world of Matt Reeves is created. Obviously, we are as well, but he's done such a great job and such a specific job with the film, having been inspired by so many different films. Now, for someone who has just watched this Batman film, doesn't want to just go back and watch the Dark Knight trilogy or BVS and stuff like that, what films would you guys recommend they go back and watch that's similar to Batman 2022? Because I have a few.
Yeah. Well, I think this feels like a Fincher.
Fincher. There we go.
So we can talk about Zodiac in terms of the
Riddler.
The Riddler's image in terms of his leather mask and the glasses and the signs that he leaves behind. That is obviously some sort of based off the Zodiac killer in San Francisco, many years ago, and then so the Zodiac took from that true life story, and then Seven with the sort of idea that the city is constantly raining.
It's always raining. It's always dark. It's always dirty. Always fucked up.
And the detectives are following a series of crimes, so it works in that sort of similar way. And then I think Chinatown as well. With Jack Nicholson sort of discovering a real corrupt city, and with some twists and some turns.
Absolutely.
That work very well. What else would you say?
Well, for me, like the film, throughout the whole thing, obviously because it's a mystery noir, you're questioning a lot of things. And I really like how they got the main character to almost question his entire reality. Yes. So if I compare that to other films, like really like for me, like a film like Shutter Island.
Oh wow! Okay. Gotcha.
Like we follow a main character who's also this detective character who goes in, and midway, like close towards the third act of the film, everything starts being questioned, whether or not what's right, what's wrong, what's real. And like for me, when I was sitting down watching the Batman, I had that same moment because like obviously I'm a huge Batman fan. The Court of Owls, all that stuff, like it was very, very similar. Like Bruce Wayne's entire reality was crumbling before him because his entire Batman persona is because his parents were trying to do good for the city, whatever. Everyone knows that. But like him finding out that his parents could have been these people these crazy people that he was thinking the whole time was wrong. And 2 years into his Batman, he started questioning everything.
What you said, mate, about a mystery, the mystery causing you to question yourself. That is a big thing, and that's why I was speaking of other films similar to this. First of all, great kind of Fincher stuff. I'd also say Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, because the relationship between Daniel Craig and Rooney Mara is somewhat to Batman and Catwoman. There's a lot of biking around as well, and Panic Room for the great kind of atmosphere, the great camera work and stuff like that. But also Taxi Driver, for voiceover, for the dark, desolate nature of New York. But actually, what I came to realize over the course of the last few days is that Batman and Blade Runner 2049 are basically the same movie. They're around the same length. There are scenes that are very similar. That mystery also gets the character that Ryan Gosling plays to kind of question who he is. And speaking of that Catwoman scene where she's kind of wearing the eye, and we'll get back to that in a bit, and then she's kind of going through. There are scenes like that where he's got Ryan Gosling's got the drone in Vegas, and he's got it's a very kind of, it moves very similarly, and the craft of it is very similar. Obviously, Denis did that film. Greg Fraser shot this. Also did Dune with Denis. And I think, if you like the Batman, watch Blade Runner 2049 because you're going to get the exact same kind of experience, I think. But so thoughts on like the overall kind of crafting of this world. I know you talked a lot about that already, but what do you think of this particular version of Gotham? Because I think like the Nolan one, it's just Chicago/New York.
Yes.
It's like what the fuck, right? Like
there's a weird distinction between Batman Begins and the other two.
Yes, there is.
Because
there really is.
I think Nolan in Batman Begins went for a model and filming a model of Gotham. So they went really gothic, and they had this train line running down the middle, and it felt very like video game vibes.
It felt like the comics.
But then this version of Gotham felt completely detached from any other city that we've seen before.
It's just perfect. It's just perfect. And that's what I was saying to these guys off camera a while ago, is that my favourite scene in the film is actually the opening, not the Riddler POV shot, but and we'll talk about that too, but the opening voiceover, where it's on Halloween, and it's an intercut montage of these three guys, they're kind of the guy robbing the convenience store, the guy spray painting, and then the bunch of thugs trying beat the Asian guy up.
Yeah.
And they're like, Batman's like, I need to use the shadows as a weapon. Like, and what is it like? They think I'm in the shadows. But I am the shadows. And that's like, I genuinely was like, oh shit, like in the cinema. It's such a good line. But that's how I always wanted a Batman movie to begin, of like the camera kind of slowly pushing into a dark alley and something coming out, and you hear the footsteps coming out, and everyone's like, even if Batman's not there, it just makes you scared shitless.
Yeah.
That's the Batman should have. Now, let's talk about what happens when he comes out, which is a conversation that we've had, which is when he comes out and he fights them. Mm-hmm. This is a Batman he's not Batfleck, okay? No. Maybe he's not even Batman Bale, where we were talking about this, of like, Rob Pattinson's Batman is very much the thinker. He is the Batman that is the detective. Batfleck is the fighter.
Yeah.
Bale is somewhere in between.
Yes.
But what we've noticed about Rob Pattinson's Batman, and a great thing that Matt Reeves does, is because it's his second year and stuff like that, and we don't, in this world, right, he's not trained by the League of Assassins or Ra's al Ghul, he's trained by Alfred, right?
That's implied.
He's not actually that, like, he's a good fighter, but I mean, like, Batfleck would snap him in half.
Yeah.
And we were talking about, like, would he beat Bale? So thoughts, because he gets hit a lot.
Yeah, he does.
Right?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Well, going back and watching Bale's Batman trilogy, one thing I did notice, he's a slow fighter.
Yeah.
Bale does very much these punches and then these turns, and then he does this sort of stance a few times, and he sort of
this thing,
and he does that, and he like the last minute, and then occasionally he did like a kick in the face in Dark Knight Rises. So he definitely is quite a slow but serious brute force muscular guy, and a one punch knockout type of character. I think Robert Pattinson was much faster. The way they did it, he is more nimble. Yeah. And there's a bit where he grabs a gun and he moves it in close, and he kind of breaks an arm.
We say that he's weak, but he's not that weak, because the guy takes a fucking shotgun blast to the chest and he still he's still going. Yeah. So I think obviously,
with a bit of help from adrenaline.
Adrenaline.
Oh, yeah.
Now, is it adrenaline or is it fucking venom? But no. But one of the things we loved about it is that it is a very realistic Batman. Like his Batmobile, realistically, would get crushed by Bale's tank. But it's still so much fun to watch.
Yeah.
And so I think Rob Pattinson, his Batman, is definitely the most interesting thinker of all the Batmans, and the most interesting character in that sense. I wanted to touch on a few different decisions that Matt Reeves makes in this movie, from a filmmaking point of view. The first one being setting the tone of the film, because in the second shot of the movie, after the big POV, when you go into the house and then you see the mayor turn, he walks away and you just fucking see the Riddler stood there.
Yeah.
The entire cinema was like, oh shit, because they knew right then that they were in for a different kind of Batman movie. And what do you boys think about that scene? Because it's
from that moment, I knew that I was going to really enjoy this film, because I knew that it was going in a completely different direction. It was going to be a murder mystery in a way. And so from that I was just like I was blown away by that opening, because I thought it was Batman doing the POV, and then doing the subversion was really effective.
Thoughts?
Yeah, like the whole film, like being a murder mystery, like, or noir, like, was just exactly what I would want from a Batman film.
Exactly.
Because like it writes like a comic, like all the comics are detective comics. It's all Batman. There's a mystery. Batman has to solve it. We follow him through this entire process, and he solves it in the end, or doesn't solve it. But that's the whole point. There's a mystery. If you look at the Bale Batman, it's like that's a city-saving Batman. It's like they're too broad, or sometimes when he's doing the detective work, it's very minimal. For example, like the I think it was in Dark Knight where he's like getting a bullet.
Oh, the bullets! Yeah. That makes no sense. It was like, what the fuck?
It's like okay, there's a bunch of crazy tech, but like there's only a handful or maybe one or two scenes of detective work. This entire film is all just a mystery, which was I loved it. I really loved it.
I mean, again, going into the subjectivity of it all, because this is without question the most subjective Batman we've ever had, and the minimal wide shots, right, or whatever. But when we were with Batman, like the camera's either like attached to the car, attached to the bike, right behind him, right in front of him.
Sometimes it's
like
first
his
person.
Fucking first person, right? And what's so good about that is that it's not just in the filmmaking. Matt Reeves writes it and Rob Pattinson acts it like that. And what I mean by this is my favorite writing scene, I guess, in this entire film, and I've told him before, is when Batman's having a chat with the Riddler in Arkham.
Yeah.
And because he thinks that the Riddler has figured out that Bruce Wayne is Batman. So he sees in the Riddler's house, which by the way is a scene ripped right out of Seven.
It's phenomenal eye acting.
Acting, right?
Without eyebrows, which is quite difficult. And it's the slow
realization. But what it is that he goes into the house, he sees a picture of Bruce Wayne next to Batman, he thinks, oh shit, I've been found out. Goes in, then Riddler's like, Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
And then you realize after a while that the guy doesn't know. He's just talking about Bruce Wayne.
He says the line which gets you to realize that that he still thinks they're separate is he was the last person we haven't got yet.
We haven't got it, yeah. And so what I loved about it was that Rob Pattinson at that point knew, oh shit, okay, I'm actually good.
Yeah.
But I can't act relieved, otherwise he's gonna know that I thought he was onto something. And so as he was figuring it out, I think us as the audience, we were like, we're good. Like he's good. Like he's not exposed just yet. And I think that kind of Matt Reeves being able to write that kind of realization, in making us in the mind of, putting us in the headspace of Batman is just genius.
Yeah.
All right. The next thing is the pacing, because this is a nearly 3-hour movie. Let's talk about that.
Yes.
I told you my biggest concern with this was that, being that it's a murder mystery, it's a mystery movie, and there are so many scenes that feel kind of procedural, where you go to the iceberg lounge like 3 times, 4 times. You go to the Bat Signal building like 5 or 6 fucking times for like there'll be like a minute conversation scene every other half hour where he goes to talk to Gordon. When you rewatch this, are those scenes gonna drag? That's my thing. Is it like do you know what I mean? Though, like, is it gonna?
I think
hold up.
The film has about 10 or 12 subversions.
Right.
And I think, being a 3-hour film, I can't remember all of them. I think as I will watch it, I will. But I think I'll still enjoy the sort of reveals. And actually, I can watch it with maybe a nicer overview look. Yeah. And so there's so many subversions in terms of the opening POV actually being Riddler or Selena Kyle,
the
daughter of Falcone, and then Falcone when he speaks to Batman and says, actually, your father came to me and asked to have this guy killed, and then that's then subverted again when Alfred tells him the truth, and then the Bruce Wayne reveal, but then he doesn't know that he's Bruce Wayne, and then again the final thing is who are you? I am vengeance. So Batman's now inspired a new group of people to take out that anger on the city, and that's when he realizes he has to be something else. So there's multiple times where it changes your expectation and moves it enough times that I think there's going to be multiple rewatches.
Even if you don't like the story, because I watched it with a friend who was kind of lost by the mystery, he said what kept me going was the filmmaking. I loved the way the camera moved. I loved the way the actors kind of did their thing. And I was like, that's why I think this movie's so brilliant, because it's not just one thing. If you don't like the music, which you're an idiot if you don't like the music, because the Riddler thing, the Batman thing, the fucking Catwoman thing is amazing. You can watch it for the production design. If you hate the production design, you can love the acting. There is no weakest link in this movie, and that's what's brilliant about it. And to further that point of Matt Reeves' pacing, 3-hour movie, that scene, that's what I'm talking about, where Selena is in the club and she's with the eyes and then she's looking at everything. 9 times out of 10, the studio would have made someone cut that scene, because it's so long. She's in there for 5-6 minutes, right? And nothing really actually happens. You're just kind of finding it out slowly but surely.
Yeah, it just sets up the DA.
It sets up Gil Colson, but what I love about it is it's in most can you see that happening in a Marvel movie? No. That's the brilliance of it, is that Matt Reeves has been allowed to just make a brilliant film, and one that can go long, one where scenes can stretch. That's a good point to say, that actually this is the first film that I've watched in ages, a superhero film that I prefer over most of maybe all of the Marvel films. My favorite Marvel film is Iron Man 1. Right.
And then I think this the Batman is definitely going up there.
If I was to compare this to a Marvel film, Logan's another R film, which is Marvel. These are two great movies that follow individual characters that are both R-rated comic book movies, which I think if you put them, I couldn't even choose which one's better for me personally, because I love both.
I was reading some Rotten Tomatoes reviews, I saw them on TikTok and stuff. Someone said someone gave this film a negative review because it's not funny or it's not bright.
I saw that.
And I'm like, what the fuck is your problem, man? Like, have you been just watching MCU films this whole time?
No,
Like,
that's
what
the
the
issue.
hell?
That's the issue because superhero movies now have almost become a trope to be funny and right. Like that's what Marvel is, right? So it's kind of hard to compare for me.
Yeah.
Like Batman to like No Way Home because like No Way Home every 5 minutes someone makes a fucking joke about like a bread or something like that. Yeah. Like you don't have to be fair.
I was very annoyed because they had the opportunity to go darker and more emotional with Eternals.
Oh, it's Eternal.
Oh, yeah.
And then they threw in so many jokes that I really couldn't take it seriously.
I mean, again, even with No Way Home, like for me, you take out Andrew and Toby, the best Tom scene is when fucking May gets off. Like, you know, like that's the best scene in the film. Or like when he's about to kill Green Goblin and then Toby stops him. That's the cool shit. You know, and that's what Batman is full of. Yeah. Not to say that Batman doesn't have humor, because it's a funny movie.
I love the humor is done well.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So Colin Farrell as the Penguin is kind of the main laughing, the main piece of humor, right? Because he's like we said.
Well, don't forget the Riddler. Some of his riddles.
Paul Dano is just.
Some of those riddles are pretty.
Thumb drive is
pretty funny. But what even
URL.
You know what happens when a liar dies?
He lies still.
That's got some wit. That's got some wit. It's very dark humor, but I still appreciated the writing there.
Absolutely.
And then the sort of the visual gag of the penguin waddling away. And the thumb drive was a great.
One of my favorite. Batman has the best fucking comebacks. You know when he's like, "You could have pulled your punch, man. I did." You know, stuff like that. It's just clever writing. Yeah. Just good stuff from Matt Reeves.
Because everything in the writing is rooted in some form of realism. Like the humor. Like if you compare it to Marvel humor, like would a superhero in a situation like this really say something as witty and like something like that? It's serious, you know. This film, all the jokes and stuff, like they make sense. Like it's not like he would say something else. You know
out of proportion.
There are a few layers deeper.
Yeah, when Batman's kind of in that crime scene, the very first crime scene, and the forensics guy's kind of doing it, and he walks up and just fucking sees Batman. He's like, oh shit, you know. And it's just like imagine in real world.
Yes.
If there was a guy dressed like that.
And when Batman is spotting all the clues, and the forensic woman is
following him.
And that's again a clever. And it's not funny. It's not laugh out loud funny, but it's still quite
for someone who knows Batman. You're like,
mate, when he was just walking, he didn't even say anything. He just looks at the blood and then just walks away. Then the forensic lady looks at him. Then shit.
Oh shit! Yeah, exactly.
And even when he's staring, he's almost like staring at the kid who's obviously just walked in on his father being killed, and he stares for a considerable long. And Matt Reeves is like not shy about holding take.
Shot,
and and Gordon having to go. All right, we've got to get out of it. Like,
and Alfred sees it as well.
And that was quite clever and quite a human moment from Gordon going like, all right, come on, let's go.
I mean, let's move on to one thing I want to talk about, which we haven't touched on yet, and it's by no means the greatest strength of the film, but it's the action. All right, because I think Matt Reeves, one thing he went into this film with, knowing full well, is when it came to the scale and the size of the film, because this is, it's a lot cheaper than I'm sure BVS or The Dark Knight Rises. He wasn't going to go big, but he was going to go dense, right? And by the way, this is most evident in the last shot of the movie. And I was saying it to these guys, the Batman 2022 and The Dark Knight have the exact same ending. It's just Batman riding off in a motorcycle. That's it. But whilst Nolan has soaring music, voiceover, he's a silent protector, a watchful guardian, a Dark Knight, dun, dun, and he's riding off, and it's a wide shot. Matt Reeves does the same thing on Robert Pattinson's eyes, whilst, and so that says everything it needs to say if someone wants to compare these two films, because they're not the same movie. Now, personally, I like The Dark Knight a little bit more, and we'll go into why. But Nolan and Matt Reeves, they're telling a similar story of a similar character, but from completely different points of view. And that is the brilliance of it, and why I don't think people should be too anal about comparing these two films. Because they're brilliant because of how different they are. And so when we come to action, whether it be the Batmobile chase, the hand-to-hand combat fights, what do you boys think of that?
The hand-to-hand combat fights? Yeah. In terms of comparing the action?
No, just like how it was done. Because personally, nothing beats the Warehouse.
No, of course.
You're not going to beat Snyder.
Well, yeah, but the action sequences in this film are great. I mean, I was taken a bit out of it, to be honest, in the car chase.
What are the main fight moments in this film? So there's the opening and the train station.
Yeah, there's a train
and then
station.
then he beats up a few people to get into the club.
Yeah, it's in the iceberg lounge.
And he gets stopped by penguins.
Oh, and then when he goes into the blackout with the guns going off. That's more of a visual.
And then obviously the last fight scene with the Riddler.
Yeah.
The big set piece, of course, is the Batmobile. Yeah. What were we gonna say about?
Yeah, I mean, I was taken a bit out of it, to be honest, with all the explosions, because because it's a film, it's meant to be, following Batman, and very, like you said, dense. Seeing all those explosions, like, mate, those people are fucking dead. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, he just, like, 3 tanker trucks just fucking rolled over it and exploded, and then he ramps off of a fucking dude who's probably dead, like, And it's like he just walks like that so casually, and it turns out he doesn't even need the penguin.
Yeah, I would also say though that does also occur in the Nolan trilogy.
Where kind of
so one of the things, Batman Begins, Ra's al Ghul's like, execute him, and he's like, I'm not an executor, but then he decides to explode the whole building and kill anyone anyway. Like nobody survives that except for Ra's al Ghul, or Liam Neeson's character. And so I thought that was, I'm not going to execute that guy, but I will explode the whole building. Yeah. And then also later on in the film saying, I'm not going to kill you, but I don't need to save you.
And
then send the train straight into like a street of people.
Yeah.
And then also he does sort of similar stuff later on in the Dark Knight Rises, where he's driving through a city, and then he will explode a whole building to fly the bomb out of the city. But that's part and part of the superhero element of the genre.
And maybe that's why I don't mind Zack Snyder's BVS Affleck killing people, because Zack Snyder was like, well, if you look at like the Nolan movies, the guy has killed so many people, but he just says he doesn't kill people, but he fucking does. So my Batman is just gonna kill them because he doesn't give a fuck anymore. But it makes sense obviously in that case because he's old, his Robin's dead, his fucking
But I would say that the Penguin causes all of most of the car crashes. He's just following behind.
That car chasing, what I loved about it was that Matt Reeves designed the Batmobiles to be more nimble than the Tumbler or the Batfleck one, right? Yeah. But it still feels heavy because like when he's trying to drift, it kind of goes off a little bit, or it misfires and stuff like that. And so there's a weight to it, and I love the sound design for when he's kind of the car's going through all of these cars. You hear it reminds me of this one in Mission Impossible Fallout, where Rebecca Ferguson's kind of biking through these tunnels or whatever, and you just hear like. And the sound design is just brilliant. But before that happens is when they find that they unzip the bag and they see the girl Annika or whatever, and then Colin Farrell Penguin shoots them, and he knocks up. And I gotta say, like, the one thing I love about this movie is how the stakes feel real. Because when you watch a Batman movie, even Dark Knight Rises, Batman's not gonna fucking die. You know a lot of the main characters aren't gonna die. But for a second there, when Catwoman, when Zoe Kravitz, such a good performance, she's kind of leaning up against that car, and she has like a pistol. And then Jeffrey Gordon, James Gordon, played by Jeffrey Wright, is kind of backed up, and he's fucked. And so Colin Farrell's about to come up, and she looks like she's about to fucking die. And that's a kind of like Anne Hathaway never went to those depths, and she was no one never pushed her to those depths, and I think even Zack Snyder never pushed any characters to those depths. And I love that Matt Reeves was like, yeah, let's go there. I want to go. We've never been there before. Let's fucking go there. And I love that so much. It was just brilliant.
Yeah. And also it was pretty cool how Batman turned on the car but then waited.
Yeah.
He's actually almost going to enjoy the car chase. Yeah. He could have sort of got out the car and fought him one on one, but he decided to wait in the car and wait for Oz to start driving.
I know I said we shouldn't really compare, but to Dark Knight trilogy, to Keaton, to Batfleck, where does Pattinson rank for you? What do you think about the world and the style of it, everything?
For me, like, I'd rank it, honestly, comparing the way my first reaction to watching the Dark Knight trilogy and compared to this, I think I enjoy this more.
Right.
Because, like, me, like, reading the comics, playing the games, watching the shows, like, it really hits me a lot harder just because it really is just a mystery, which I love. I just really loved seeing Batman solve a mystery for 3 hours.
Yeah.
Like, that's essentially it. Like, I'd rank it higher. Personally.
For me, it's the opposite, because for me, this is the most intellectual Batman. My brain has never been more stimulated than watching Batman.
Yeah.
But for me, what this likely was to like one thing, and I told Theo this. Obviously, towards the end, when he's carrying that person up and being wheeled away in the helicopter, it's very inspirational, cool. But there's no like, dun dun kind of moment with like Dark Knight. There's where you get chills, and it's about this. It's not about this. It's about this. Do you know what I mean? Though, like where Nolan is able to make.
It has a lot of heart.
Nolan's films, and it's the Dark
I'd
Knight
actually say so. Yeah, this film is more cerebral, and Nolan's is way more hearty.
Yeah.
I'd say I am very excited to see the progression of Robert Pattinson's Batman over a trilogy. If you look at Batman Begins, they do this sort of they do this weird thing early on where you have sort of. They style his hair a bit nerdy.
Yeah.
Bruce Wayne, and he's about to go kill. He's about to go kill the person that killed his parents, and you have a King Richard scene where he's about to go kill someone.
And then
he says to Rachel, I'm annoyed that he's killed because I was going to do it, and then she slaps him in the face 3 times, and he goes to see Falcone, and so that sets up his real like sort of young Bruce Wayne vibe.
The emo Bruce.
He then goes away and learns the criminal underground, and he becomes like part of the criminal underworld, and that's a very cool character choice that sort of Nolan wrote into the character. So that was really great. But then he moves through a lot of character progressions quite quickly.
Yeah.
So Ra's al Ghul like teases him and says, "Your father was the reason that they were killed.
Yeah.
That he was too scared to stand up to Gotham." And then he gets really angry, and then he's like controlling our anger and all this sort of thing. So they do rush through a lot of those progressions early on in the film. Whereas this one, it's like they let the whole film up until the final like moments of the film. That's the character progression. It only happens in the final moments when the person says, "I am vengeance,"
and he realizes
that's the only moment where there's a real shift in his character. And so if Matt Reeves, over the progression of 3 films, does these subtle shifts, then you can create a really sort of
a full-fledged.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, so if there's 3 more films, right? 2 more films, excuse me. Right now, he is the Rob Pattinson Batman. I think in the next one, what I want there to be a bit of a time jump. Yeah. So I don't mind waiting.
Did you believe going back to Bale's Batman with the Dark Knight Rises? Did you believe the 8 years? He's got a beard and a cane.
Was it 8 years?
8
I watched it 2 nights ago.
Since the Harvey Dent murder, he'd been literally like hiding away.
A recluse. I don't think they spent enough time, and I think Matt Reeves would have, because Matt Reeves is such a patient director.
So again, that was I never really bought an 8-year time jump.
Yeah.
It could have been 1 year of him being a recluse, but 8 years of Bruce Wayne just sort of playing around was quite an interesting choice. But I don't know if it was really
so that's why I wanted a Rob Pattinson time. So I don't mind if it takes place in another 5 years. I don't mind waiting another 5 years for this if they do it properly, because right now he's Rob Pattinson Batman. In the next one, where he becomes a bit more full-fledged, where he becomes a better fighter, a better thinker, whatever, he can become the Bale Batman. And what I hope is about the 3rd one, he'll be in his 40s. He'll be the Batman that Batfleck should have had the chance to be. He'll be that full-fledged Batman that can beat everyone in a fight, that can outthink everyone.
Okay.
And
question: will they bring Catwoman back? Because I personally thought she was one of the standouts.
Zoe Kravitz is perfectly cast. She's so good, and I hope that she does. Let's actually now to sort of wrap up, talk about where we want this thing to go. How do you want to,
Well, they've obviously set up the Joker.
They have.
I would like to see obviously a lot more of the criminals be explored, but in terms of like the Batman character, this film, Batman and Bruce Wayne are the same person.
Yeah,
they're not more of a same person. Exactly.
So you want to see Playboy Bruce?
I want to see Playboy Bruce.
Yeah, but like I quite enjoyed the fact that they were the same person, because like we know when we're seeing Batman do stuff, like there's like a disconnect when you're watching like the other like the normal character of Bruce Wayne. There's a disconnect between Batman and Bruce Wayne. I kind of liked seeing that there being no disconnect, because the way he's acting like in the bat suit is going to be exactly the same as he's acting like when he's out of it. So I don't know, for me I like it like that, and I want to see how the next film, if he does progress into this Playboy character, how that would develop from
what film. I think they could do with the Playboy Bruce character. You could have a scene where he's sort of maybe surrounded by girls in a club, but they still do a sort of POV as he's still still there watching and observing, and then occasionally can break from that, where someone says something and he makes a joke and then he goes back to sort of. So you could have that moment where he's still actively being a detective and observing, and have that. But that's a fun juxtaposition that they haven't explored yet, which they can do.
Yeah, I just want to see how they'll transition if they do end up choosing a Playboy Bruce from this current recluse.
I mean, the thing is, I think going forward, this is not again, that's what I love about the Zack Snyder world, because it was so Superman fucking exists, so anyone can. Exactly. Whereas this one, we have to make peace with the fact that we're probably not going to see Man-Bat. We're not going to see Poison Ivy, right? I want to, but we're not gonna. Yeah. We're probably not even going to see I want to see Deathstroke, but I don't think we're gonna.
Yeah, but I'm glad we can avoid aliens as well.
Yeah, the bigger,
having Batman in the sort of alien world with these flying things and him sort of shooting them up. We can avoid that.
But so going forward, I mean, there's two things that I need, my two boxes I need to tick. Fucking, he needs to get a Robin. He needs to get Dick Grayson, and the reason he needs to get Dick Grayson is because Court of Owls. We need Court of Owls. We have to fucking get Court of Owls. Otherwise,
can you have Court of Owls without Robin?
You kind of can, but it's if you've read the Court of Owls New 52 first volume, at the end you find out that Dick Grayson's family is kind of connected. And being that the Court of Owls has talons, right, which are these kind of, they're assassins, they're super soldiers. It does make a Batman. If you have Court of Owls as the main villain, obviously it's another mystery, it's another whole kind of intellectual thing. Yeah. But this time, because the talons are kind of Batman's physical superior, because they're essentially super soldiers. Yeah. You also get that physical side, because that's what we didn't get this film, right? We didn't get to see Batman his back snapped by Bane. We didn't get to see Batman as Affleck, once again, I love him, punch someone so hard that they go through a fucking wall. All right, when a Talon comes, you can do that. Yeah. You don't need a Bane, all right? You can have a Talon, and that's why I want Court of Owls. And then so that's for the second movie, Court of Owls. And then maybe you have a bit of Joker, a bit of maybe Mr. Freeze, whatever. But in my opinion, and how the last film should end, is they need to adapt the War of Jokes and Riddles, which is, Batman. I think it was one of his earlier, years as Batman. But we can push this later, where Dick Grayson, hopefully by the third film, will be Nightwing, and he'll be on Jason Todd or Tim Drake or another Robin, right? Or maybe Barbara Gordon. But that film is all about a civil war between the Riddler and the Joker, where half of Gotham's villains go to Riddler and the other half go to Joker. Yeah. What a way to end the Pattinson trilogy. Yeah. And I think Matt Reeves would do such a good job with that. Ground it, make it kind of realistic, and really make that film be about what The Dark Knight is about, which is fighting for the heart of Gotham. Mm-hmm. And making us realize that Batman can't exist without the villains can't exist without Batman. Yeah. There's so much kind of stuff to explore there, and I think if ever there was anyone to do it, it's Matt Reeves, because he's proven himself.
This is this is a really great opportunity to explore lots of the other source material. And one thing I do want to explore is Alfred's relationship with Batman as well. That was one of the areas that they didn't touch.
They didn't touch on that much. And Andy Serkis is so good.
And Alfred's ability to decipher codes and stuff. And where does that come from? And exploring that background, because I think there's a real interesting story there, that he's able to break the codes that the police department can't break. Yeah. And also the fact that there's a mention that he trained Batman, and that, or maybe he was the security guard to
Wayne.
Wayne's. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to say one thing about the Riddler.
Okay.
Because if you can, the general character of the Riddler, the most depictions of him is he's this somewhat charismatic yet awkward kind of guy, but he's it's not really dark ever. He's almost like the Joker if the Joker was a loser. You know what I mean? So it's it was really, really sick. I was excited personally to see how they'd take the Riddler dark in this film, and I really enjoyed it. Because especially if they do introduce the Joker next, we'll have to see how their characters would interact. Because this is a serious, gritty Riddler, and a maybe also serious gritty Joker.
It's a dark web Riddler
with the fucking 500
exactly.
And that's a very interesting way of going about sort of grounding that character in quite a disturbing way. And I think that's just it. I don't know how they'll do that with the Joker, and how they will ground the Joker in a sort of.
No, Matt Reeves has said. He said so. There was a scene that was cut where Batman goes to Arkham and talks to someone he arrested in his first year. It's the Joker, but he's shrouded in darkness. And apparently the idea is that this Joker is someone who has like a physical condition that stops him from keeps him smiling the whole time, and stuff like that. And Matt Reeves he was interviewed about it, and he actually said, like, Joker, yes, Batman has met him before in this world. Batman was the one who probably put Joker in Arkham, and all this kind of stuff.
No, like I'm very interested to read the comments on this pod. And see what people think. Definitely, I recommend rewatching the Bale Batman and that sort of thing, because it's now very interesting to look back and compare it, and you still gotta and like Pamela said, I think Nolan really gave it a lot of heart and a lot of these amazing moments. And this one's way more cerebral. If they can keep this world consistent, and sort of just build upon it, that would be great.
Any parting words?
I'm just excited to see what they have for the next film. I mean, I want to see how all these characters develop. Bruce Wayne, Batman, particularly, especially with the Playboy character. I hope they go that way, and I hope they show how he'll transition from his not knowing who he is to getting that persona. Again, with the consistency of the world, I hope they don't change it up too much, because this is really Gotham, and I
just brilliant. Well, that was our Batman. Those were our thoughts on the Batman, and hopefully you guys enjoyed, and we'd love to hear what you guys think about the movie and think about our thoughts on the future going forward. We would love to hear what kind of heroes, villains, characters you want to see going forward, and do let us know actually like what other podcasts you'd like us to do and talk about, what other films, what other subjects, and we'll be sure to put them on the list. So thank you very, very much for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Cheers.
Cheers.